Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton tonight and tomorrow night. Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe and Brendan O'Neill are still coming up this hour. But first, it's time for The Clash. Earlier in the show, I once again called out the awful comments made by the Labour MP, Dr Rupa Huq, which are, quite frankly, racist in every sense of the word, something that even Keir Starmer agrees with.
Me immediately say that what she said, in my view, was racist, it was wrong, and she's been suspended from the whip in the party, and that was done very, very quickly. I think that tells you how strongly I feel about those comments. She shouldn't have said it. She will be dealt with, and I'll be absolutely clear it was racist. Obviously, in the scheme of the last few days, where it's been very, very confident and buoyant here in Liverpool, it was, something I, deeply regret, but I'm glad that we acted quickly.
Now, whilst I command and commend Starmer for distancing himself from his former boss's legacy of allowing prejudiced comments to go unchecked, it was rather telling that Labour's chief race baiter, David Lammy, was oddly reluctant to call out a fellow party member when asked about it on Sky News last night.
David Lammy, these are racist comments by your colleague.
As a consequence of that. So let us focus on the mainstream. Let us focus on jobs. Let us focus on climate. Let us focus on growth and prosperity.
We have been talking about that, though, for the whole conference.
I'm sorry, I make no apologies. This is not the moment to discuss.
You don't want to apologise for racist comments made by your colleague.
This is the moment to focus on Keir Starmer and what he's just delivered for the country.
Whilst Huq's suspension and condemnation by the party leadership is obviously welcome, the fact comments like these were ever uttered in the first place has once again shown the hypocrisy of the left, who will jump on any perceived offence by the right whilst spewing hate. So what do you think? Does the left have a problem with race? Let me know your thoughts. Email me at dan@gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. And whilst there, you can vote in our Twitter poll, and I'll bring you those results shortly. But first, to duke it out, I'm joined by social policy analyst Dr Rakib Ehsan and broadcaster Narinder Kaur. Narinder, let me start with you. Do the left have a problem with race?
I think the left and the right have a problem with the race. It's a very open-ended question, that is. So I'm going to say, yes, probably they do, but so do the right. The Tory government do. If you note Boris Johnson's, all his racist remarks, I'd say both parties have a problem with race. But in this instant, I'm going to say that what she said was very ill-informed. It was very silly. It was grossly misjudged. However, I don't think it was racism.
And why do you not think it was racism, Narinder?
I think, Mark, my background, I've experienced racism, real racism, hardcore racism my entire life. I've also experienced being called a coconut by my own community, and that is not the same thing. I don't care what anyone says. It's not racism. It's not shocking. And I think what Rupa Huq said has been twisted for a political agenda. I think she's been dealt with. I think it wasn't the right thing to say. We're not condoning it. But I've been called coconut many a time by my community. That's not racism. It's not. It's not nice, but it's not racism.
Narinder, how can it not be racist?
Being called the P word. Sorry?
Narinder, sorry to interrupt you. How can it not be racist to say that a black man, a very accomplished man who's become the Chancellor of the Exchequer, one of the top 3 jobs in the country, is only superficially black? On what planet is that not racist?
I think, Mark, you have to look at the meaning. You don't know what she meant behind that. I think, take colour aside, I think that was silly she said that. I think she's talking about it in a social term. I think, look, no one has had the privileges that he has had. She's saying he's not relatable to the black and ethnic minority communities. He doesn't understand the plight. He's basically racial gatekeeping. But it's not racist to say what she did. I don't think it was. I'm sorry. It's the same as me being called coconut by my own community. That's not racism. It's just not nice.
Rakib, I'm very puzzled by this. We'll come back to Narinder's thoughts shortly. But do you agree with Narinder that these comments were not racist?
Well, I have to politely disagree with Narinder. I would say that the comments are racist, and in that sense, I definitely agree with Sir Keir Starmer. And I think that he needs to be given credit for swiftly suspending Dr. Rupa Huq from the parliamentary party. I'd make the point that her comments, ultimately what she was doing was questioning Kwesi Kwarteng's racial authenticity on the grounds that he has a prestigious education, that he speaks a certain way. She was suggesting that he doesn't sound black. The reality of the matter is, in the British black population, there is a rich diversity of accents and speaking styles. But the reality is also, in Britain, we have traditional ethnic minorities that have a very strong emphasis on educational standards. And it's quite hypocritical that these comments were made by Dr. Rupa Haq, considering that she attended a private school herself. So how would she feel if someone said, as a result of that, she wasn't authentically Bangladeshi? So I think there's a great deal of hypocrisy. I think it's grotesque. Her comments were grotesque, and ultimately it is that kind of left-wing racism where there's almost it's almost questioning one's racial authenticity just because they may speak a certain way, that they were educated a certain way.
Yes, I mean, Narinder, Diane Abbott's son attended private school, famously. Is he also only superficially black?
No, I think you've really taken her words. You're all jumping on this. I think the only people who are shocked by this are people who are going to use this and twist this as a race issue.
There's no twisting, Narinder. The words were horrific.
We don't know what Rupa exactly meant, but I'm going to really guess it that actually what she's trying to say is he's actually not understanding and has no empathy of the problems that the black and ethnic minority communities suffer in this country. And as somebody who's been called the P word too many times to count, and how much racism I've received, being called a coconut or superficially brown, that's nothing. And I think you really missed the point here. The point is social. She's talking that actually Kwasi doesn't have anything relatable to the black community or ethnic minorities, especially after what he did on Friday.
Black community, Narinder.
Sorry?
Can I ask? Narinder, let me.
British people are not a monolithic block. I'd make that point.
Sorry?
And another point that I'd make... Yeah, I'd make the point also that in black African communities, many of those communities are very traditional. They have a strong emphasis on education. So I would make the point that in some ways, the main point is that you're homogenizing black and ethnic minority people. There's a great deal of diversity in terms of education, socioeconomic status, ethnic background, religious affiliation within the broader ethnic minority population.
Narinder?
No, she's saying, she could be saying, actually, I'm educated too, but actually, I'm looking after my own. He's not looking after his own. Look what he did on Friday. She's saying, I may be well educated. She's not saying black man can't be educated. She's not saying he's not black. We all know he's black. She's saying that he doesn't understand the plight of the poorer people in this country. That's what she's saying. Take colour out of it. You're putting colour into it and make it, you're twisting it.
Though, isn't there?
Narinder, let me ask you two questions. First of all, do you think it's wrong to misgender someone? If somebody identifies as female that's a biological male, is it wrong to misgender them?
Yes, but it's not racism, is it? It's not sexism.
Okay.
It's not whatever.
There's a follow-up question. Has this man, this incredibly accomplished politician who got a scholarship to Eton, Kwasi Kwarteng, is he not effectively suffering? Is he not suffering the equivalent?
There's no such thing as a black community, Narinder.
Narinder, I haven't finished my point.
Okay, let's all agree on something. He's got nothing. He's had far higher privileges than most people in this country, black, white, or brown.
Narinder, perhaps you'd let me finish my question because you seem a little concerned by it, perhaps defensive. You said it's wrong to misgender someone if they identify as male or female, even though they might have been born the opposite. Effectively, that's the fate that's been suffered by Kwasi Kwarteng. He's been told he's not a black man. That's the racial equivalent of misgendering. And can I ask you a question, another follow-up to that? Are black people not allowed to be conservative supporting? Is that like a new policy that's been rolled out?
Not at all, and I don't think she was saying that at all either. I think, again, you're twisting it. This is becoming a race issue when it's not a race issue. This is a social issue.
She brought race into it.
Of course they can vote Tory. She calls black people can vote Tory. You can vote whoever you like.
But they're not really properly black, are they?
And she's not saying black people can't be successful. She didn't say that.
But they are, everyone that supports the Tories that's black, they're just superficially black, is that right?
No, not at all, Mark. That's not what she said. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think she was silly in what she said. She's been dealt with, but I think that wasn't a race. I don't think it was racism. And that's from somebody who suffers being called a coconut by my own community. That's not racism. Let's not make it a race issue. Keir Starmer did deal with it, but I don't think that was racism. I think it's been twisted.
Well, I think she made it a race issue by bringing up skin colour. Very ironic from the Labour Party. From the Labour Party that finds racism everywhere except when it looks in the mirror. Rakib, final question.
By the way, Dave Lammy he did say on Twitter that he didn't agree with it. He absolutely called it out.
OK. Well, last thought on this, Rakib. Is this a problem among the left?
Oh, I'd definitely say that the left needs to get its house in order when it comes to toxic racial identity politics. And I think that what it really needs to do is to better appreciate aspirational, ambitious attitudes within traditional racial and ethnic minorities. So I think that these kinds of, or you could call it an intervention by Dr. Rupa Huq, is deeply unhelpful, because ultimately what it does, it almost highlights the anti-aspirational nature of racial identity politics. And I think that the one message I would have is that the Labour Party should be criticising the Conservative Party on matters of policy. They need to focus less on their racial identity and their ethnic background and criticise Conservative Party politicians, their policy preferences and their political decisions. OK, last word, Narinder.
I think to talk about that, all the cabinets, the Labour Party, Tory Party, they can have as much multiculturalism as they like, but unless you identify with the communities, then it is a bit superficial, actually.
My deep thanks to both of you, broadcaster Narinder Kaur and social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ehsan. Who do you agree with? Does the left have a problem with race? Jimmy on Twitter says, yes, they do, but it will never be addressed properly as they see themselves as the good guys. Sean on Twitter says the shocking reality is both leading parties have a problem with race, a point made by Narinder. And AJ on Twitter says Starmer immediately removed her whip. What about Boris Johnson's previous comments? They seem a lot worse to me. Is Truss going to remove him? Well, your verdict is now in. 91% of you agree that the left do have a problem with race, whilst 9% say they do not.